I'd be lying if I said I don't miss it all. But as long as I get to inspire others, I'd say this is still the story of how we became the greatest heroes in the world.
I just finished watching My Hero Academia's final season, and words can't even begin to describe how amazing it was from start to finish. After all, aside from SAO and another show I'm not going to mention, this was the third anime I'd ever watched, being one of the main reasons that I even got into anime in the first place. Thus, it's not an over-exaggeration to say that MHA holds a special place in my heart, with this last season in particular, fully solidifying these emotions through its perfect execution and send-off to such an outstanding series. But that said, I simply wanted to share some of my thoughts on the climactic fight and everything that led up to it, reminiscing on the journey that we had the luxury of experiencing alongside all of these heroes. Now, where else would I start other than with the GOAT himself, Izuku Midoriya. I think it's an understatement to say that Midoriya has come an extremely long way from where he started, especially after seeing how powerful he became at the story's conclusion. Think about it. He quite literally started out as a quirkless crybaby, with a dream of becoming the greatest hero of all time, which would then, unsurprisingly, make him the subject to essentially every single bully within a 3-mile radius. Like, how are you going to let this kid with his goofy-ass quirk laugh at you? That's gotta be straight hands at that point, I'm just saying. Anyways, how does one go from that to defeating some of the strongest villains on the planet? You can't even deny that Midoriya is just him at that point. Of course, there'll still be those saying,
"Oh, but he was literally given the strongest ability on the planet. Of course he's going to be that strong."
And that's where you're wrong. If you don't have Deku's level of grit and perseverance, you would not be doing any of this even if you were given a god tier power. He shattered bones on a daily basis, crippling himself constantly in order to save just one more person. Sure, the power was immense, but he still had to start from zero, adapting his approach by slowly increasing the percentage of his power output in order to not fully become a vegetable by the time he got to the main fight. Even when his other quirks began manifesting, he had to endure the pain that came with that, learning how to use them all in tandem for maximum effectiveness. And all of this isn't even mentioning the burden that comes with being the 9th one-for-all successor. As the saying goes, with great power comes great responsibility, but I think it's putting it lightly to say that this is a bit too much responsibility for someone who is still a teenager. Midoriya was given the gargantuan task of defeating a villain that went undefeated by 8 other generations of users, while simultaneously battling a world-ending threat like Shigaraki before even reaching his 2nd year of high school. Ultimately, he was forced to walk a thorny path riddled with pain, hardship, and trauma, learning that being a hero wasn't some comic-like story, but rather it was a bloody route filled with regret and unfulfilled promises. Yet despite it all, he continued to smile and save people, and that's something that not many people are capable of doing. Midoriya's sheer determination elucidates how, regardless of your circumstances, you can become something greater if you just put your mind to it, and that if you are willing to struggle, you are also willing to succeed. He was the embodiment of what it meant to be a hero, even being willing to cast aside one for all if it meant saving those he held close. That is true heroism at its very core, a standard that Midoriya was able to reach through his persistent efforts. However, he wasn't able to get here alone. It's undeniable that he had many supporting figures along the way, but the one I wanted to highlight the most would most certainly be Katsuki Bakugo. Out of all the characters in MHA, the one with the greatest character development 100% belongs to Bakugo. At the beginning, he was merely an annoying bully archetype that typically gets sidelined after the first few episodes. Blessed with an extremely powerful quirk, Explosion, he was essentially destined for greatness, resulting in his arrogant persona that would lead him to terrorize those weaker than him. Now, what do you think would happen if someone like Bakugo encounters a quirkless loser like Midoriya? I don't think I need to explain myself any more than that. To him, Midoriya was his plaything, the person he viewed as the most inferior out of everyone for being quirkless. Hence, he bullied him mercilessly, going out of his way to crush his dreams and just overall being a dickhead. This nasty attitude would only worsen as Midoriya would acquire One For All, because all Bakugo could think about was winning at all costs. So the fact that his formerly quirkless underling was suddenly growing stronger was hurting his ego more than he could admit. This pent-up hatred would eventually reach its breaking point after the All Might vs. All For One fight, where Bakugo and Midoriya would fight head-to-head in one of the most memorable battles of the series to settle their differences. It was here that Bakugo's jealousy of Deku's heroism and guilt for ending All Might would be unveiled, marking the beginning of his development towards becoming a better person overall. This change was clearly evident in the events leading up to the conclusion of Deku's Vigilante arc, where Bakugo would realize his faults and fully apologized for everything he did to Midoriya in the past, as he never really considered the insurmountable burden that Midoriya was carrying at the time, and even more so when he almost died in the floating coffin, where he finally admitted that he wanted to be the kind of person Midoriya was all along. In the end, he learned to admit his shortcomings and to actually work to resolve his issues. He learned what it meant to be humble, and finally understood that being a hero was not always about just winning, and that sometimes you need to relinquish the spotlight to others for the best outcome. Remember, even the brightest of candles need to be lit by something else before they can glow, with this revelation allowing Bakugo to not only come in with the greatest save of all time, but to also establish his name as one of the greatest heroes to ever live.
Hey, Izuku. Can I still catch up to you?
Both of these characters aside, these final fights as a whole were simply extraordinary, especially when considering all the factors and story elements that came before. Going to this season, I fully expected All Might to get the typical Master Death treatment, but even without a quirk, bro is still the GOAT! He kept fighting and doing his duty until the very end, fighting through broken bones and shattered limbs if it meant stalling All For One for even a little longer. I gotta admit, I was tearing up like crazy seeing All For One attempting to rip apart All Might. Like, sure, I know he isn't real, but in that moment it felt as if a legendary figure of my childhood was being killed right in front of me. MHA simply has an amazing way of invoking emotions in the viewer, whether it be through its legendary soundtracks, its flashbacks, visuals, or choice of words. The way the anime manages to build suspense by putting the right things at the right time truly makes it feel as if you're part of that world at that moment, cheering on your favorite hero who you've known for what seems like a lifetime. Then there comes Bakugo's entrance, hands down one of the most beautiful scenes of the whole show, and it truly did justice to the finale of Bakugo's character arc as a whole. MHA's character building is simply on a different level, with this legendary moment serving as direct proof of that. Regarding the main fight between Midoriya and Shigaraki, to be honest, I'm not too sure how to feel about it. In hindsight, it makes sense that the only way to stop Shigaraki in the way Deku had envisioned, or in other words to save Shigaraki and not kill him, would be to attack him internally. But it's just sad to see such a powerful ability disappear so suddenly. It's even more annoying when considering how, when he almost managed to bring Shigaraki back from his all-consuming hatred, All For One's bum ass comes back again. Like, dude, how many times do we have to kill you for you to finally stay down? First, your face got absolutely eviscerated by All Might, forcing you to rely on life support. Second, you got cooked like a well-done steak by Endeavor. Third, All Might blasted you with a beam of doom and despair. And finally, you got railed in the ass by Bakugo's howitzer impact. You legit got deatomized after being reduced to a crying infant on live television. You got clipped. So just stay down. But no! For some reason, All For One's plot armor quite literally transcends all reason. Keep in mind that this is the dude who was a menace to society even before he was born. Yes, you heard that correctly. Before he was born. He was a hater as an embryo. At this point, I gotta stop hating. There's too many sweats in this elo. No. All that being said though, I'm glad that everyone was able to finally put All For One down for real at the end. I know the whole power of friendship trope is corny, but at this point we all kind of expected it, so it's whatever. I do want to applaud Horikoshi for deciding to fully kill off Shigaraki, because if he decided to keep him alive because Shigaraki had a change of heart, then that would have been beyond stupid in my opinion. Instead, Shigaraki ended up still remaining the leader of the League of Villains, but all the hate that had been corrupting him all of his life had faded. So in a sense, Midoriya managed to complete his mission, if only a little. Overall, while he wasn't able to fully change Shigaraki, he managed to at least put his soul at peace. And given the situation at hand, that was the best possible outcome that he could have asked for. At last, the war is finally over, and the reconstruction process begins. My initial opinions on the ending after being spoiled like crazy were not favorable, but to be fair, I only heard it in snippets, so I didn't have the full picture. Originally, I thought that after Deku lost One For All somehow, he was reduced to the depressing life of a teacher, while all of his other classmates went on to make names for themselves, leaving him behind as his name was slowly forgotten in history. Like, imagine being the one who saved the entire world from an extinction event, and now you got some annoying ass kids telling you to hurry up and grade their homework. That's crash out worthy in ways that I couldn't even describe. Now, I'm not sure if this is entirely true, but I did hear that Horikoshi tweaked the ending a bit after all the backlash he received from fans, so the adapted ending I saw could have been his refined version, and if so, I ended up being completely satisfied with it. Of course, the main premise that I just mentioned was still there, but it all made a lot more sense after receiving all of the details. For one, Hero Society was being reformed under Hawks, and many citizens were beginning to act after seeing Midoriya's display of heroism at the end of the war. Along these same lines, Midoriya is now a renowned figure in the world, constantly being recognized and idolized by others exactly like he admired All Might as a kid. In addition, All Might managed to keep his pact with Midoriya, staying alive long enough for Midoriya to fully tell the world that he was there to protect them. Luckily, Deku's atrocious haircut was only as a result of a treatment by doctors, and it wasn't a permanent thing. Thank God. Midoriya's new life as a teacher was also not as depressing as I had envisioned it either, as he was able to convey his experience to guide the next generation of heroes, whilst also following the footsteps of the GOAT, Mr. Aizawa. It even gave him the opportunity to look over kids like Kota and Eri, who wouldn't have ever been able to dream of attending a school like UA had Deku not gone to save them. So it was good to see them doing well. And then finally, following the 8-year time skip, everyone in Class 1A managed to donate enough money to give Midoriya a custom-made suit that would allow him to use all of his former abilities, enabling him to still live out his heroic dreams just like everyone else. So all things considered, I'm very content with this ending. Everyone seemed to get what they deserved, with all the students in Class 1A becoming famous and successful in their own way, while villains like Overhaul are still rotting away in hell as they should be. Yet there were two main factors that weren't fully established at the end of the anime that I wanted to see the most. The first would be whether Deku actually fully commits back to hero work after obtaining his suit, while the second would be regarding if Midoriya and Uraraka actually get together. Now don't confuse me for one of the gooners in the MHA fandom. I'm keenly aware of how terrible the MHA community is, but just hear me out for a second. This is a ship that has been sailing since the very beginning of the show. You can't even deny that. And it's obvious that Horikoshi wanted them to get together at some point. Hence, it felt incomplete that the show would just end here without this aspect being addressed, especially because Uraraka started receiving some odd flashbacks from Toga, the villain that died to save her. As such, I decided to read the final chapter of the manga, which is chapter 431 by the way if you want to read it yourself, to find out what happened. To summarize the chapter, it started out with the entirety of Class 1A meeting up to celebrate Todoroki's rise to the number 2 hero spot on the hero rankings. They all catch up and talk, celebrating the occasion, only for them to receive an alert that there was a villain nearby. This then answered my first question, where they explained how Midoriya decided to commit to his teaching duties while only doing hero work on the weekends, which is fine, but I still would have loved to see him become a full-fledged hero again. Upon subduing the villain, everyone then proceeded to part ways, and we got to say goodbye to a good majority of the leading cast. The focus then panned onto Uraraka. We learned that she was still haunted by her nightmares of Toga, and that deep down, she regretted that she wasn't able to speak to Midoriya during the reunion event. As she was thinking this, Midoriya emerges from the crowd. At last, they were alone together, and they were able to say the words that they had been holding back for all those years. A long-awaited confession, and a dream come true. Truly, this was a masterful production. I'm going to miss this anime with all my heart, and I hope you enjoyed the ride just as much as I did. Sorry for the lack of uploads. I do want to get more serious about making content, but university has been making it extremely difficult to be consistent. That being said, I'll 100% be continuing to upload stuff for you guys, so look forward to more videos in the future. For now, I guess we have to say one final goodbye to the Class 1A gang. It definitely has been one hell of a good run though.